Hello and welcome to Eric's Chase. Oh, wait. Gotta fix this microphone. There we go. That's better. Okay. Welcome to Eric's Chase Grid Talk. I don't know what episode we're on anymore. I've lost track. I know it's only like 12 or 13 or something, but I still lost track because I'm clueless like that. What's today? Monday? It's Monday, so I guess I'm supposed to talk about the race that happened yesterday at Talladega, where a lot of hearts were broken and a lot of dreams were crushed. But then a few people were all happy because good things happened. Like me, I was happy after yesterday. I know a lot of you guys probably were not. In fact, a lot, many of you guys are not happy after this weekend, as 4 of NASCAR's probably top 5 or 6 favorite drivers all got eliminated on Sunday. I'll tell you right now, spoiler alert, it was Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jimmy Johnson, Kasey Kahne, and Kyle Busch. All 4 of them are eliminated, and moving on are another 8, which are Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, Carl Edwards, Ryan Newman, Matt Kenseth, Jeff Gordon, and I'm forgetting one. Yeah, I knew that would happen. Oh, Denny Hamlin, my bad. All right, there's your 8 that are moving on. I don't have any notes in front of me, by the way, so that's why I'm trying to memorize all this off the top of my head. I'm too lazy to write stuff down. I've tried doing that for episodes in the past, and yeah, I guess it helps, but I just don't have time. I'll be honest. I come home from school, I might have a quick snack, then I'll be like, all right, got to record these episodes, got to do this stuff right here for about 20 minutes. And, you know, after I talk for 20 minutes, I then take about 10 minutes to edit it together, another 5 minutes to render it, and then it takes about, however long it takes to upload it to YouTube. So, it's a full hour or so production here after school every day. So I got to I don't have time for notes. I just got to memorize it, I stay focused during the races. I know what's going on. I guess before I get too in-depth with things, let me go over my, of course, announcements that I have to give. I'm almost finished. I'm on the last lap of filming of my Talladega race, which is W Cup Series Race 7. So that I'm aiming to release that on Friday. It'll be up on Friday, so you'll have it for the weekend. That'll be good. And I'll tell you right now, I don't know if it's going to have quite as exciting finish as the race yesterday had. And there's not going to be nearly as much 3 and 4 wide racing as there was yesterday, but it still will be a good race. I'm looking forward to it. I think you guys will enjoy it. It's one of my better ones, I think, from this season. So I know I've been kind of talking about potentially doing a NASCAR parody Halloween special in the next couple weeks. I'm going to tell you right now that has been canned. I don't have any time. I've have a whole lot of extra stuff come up that I did not originally anticipate, so I will not be making a NASCAR parody for Halloween. However, just today, in fact, I literally may have just found my best idea for one yet, and I was working on that earlier. So in the next month, you'll probably see another NASCAR parody for sure. And I think it will be a really good one, in my opinion. So look forward to that. And anything else, I'll be still doing these until Homestead. And yep, that's about it. Oh, one more thing, guys. I'm not doing a Halloween NASCAR parody, but I'm still doing a Halloween video. That'll be up probably next Monday or Tuesday. I'm not exactly sure when. So I still am doing a Halloween video. It just will not be NASCAR related. So I hope you enjoy that. I don't do very many live action skits anymore, but hopefully you'll enjoy this one. So that's all I have to. That's enough talking about myself and my life for a minute. Let's get to the actual race and the point standings. Like I said, a lot of NASCAR Nation is unhappy with the way yesterday's race turned out. It was a good race, I thought. It was relatively clean. I don't think people expected it to be a lot of wrecks. I think a lot of people expected them to race pretty conservatively, knowing everything that's at stake. That being said, we still had 2 or 3 pretty, not big wrecks, but I'd say medium-sized wrecks where 5-6 cars were involved, and at a few points there was championship contenders involved, and so that shook up the standings big time. The race, basically, it was a couple of differing strategies. You saw guys like Jimmy Johnson, Brad Keselowski, Dale Earnhardt Jr., guys that basically the 3 of them needed to win 100% to advance into the next round of the chase, whereas you saw other guys like Denny Hamlin, Jeff Gordon, Matt Kenseth, Carl Edwards, etc., Kyle Busch, who kind of, for at least the first half of the race, hung towards the back for the most part, hung back around 25th to 35th, back around there, and just kind of waited it out, and wait while a couple smaller wrecks happened up in front of them. They let that skedaddle, they let that proceed and go on and do what it was going to do. And then towards the end of the race, I shouldn't say all those guys, but at least a couple of those guys managed to work their way up to the front and were able to get good finishes out of it. There's a few guys, kind of like Ryan Newman, kind of had a little bit of running in the back, a little bit of running up towards the front. Kasey Kahne kind of had the same deal. few other chasers has those things happen, and a couple guys. Well, I guess I should say just Kyle Busch was really the biggest loser in terms of all the chase contenders. And I mean, he came into the day yesterday at Talladega. He came into it second in the actual points. Yeah, I know Harvick had a win, so he'd technically be second, I guess. But if you looked at total points, he was second. Harvick was actually third. So Kyle Busch was 26 points ahead of the cutoff coming into today. So he was basically like right in the back. I'm just going to come out, get a top 30, top 25, clinch my way into the next round. Don't worry, just don't get caught up in a wreck. Unfortunately, one of the first actual substantial wrecks of the day involved a few guys spinning out on the backstretch, and as Kyle Busch was trying to slow down and avoid it, Austin Dillon came up and ran to the side of him, and I don't know if it was Dillon, Busch was kind of cutting across the track a little bit, so it wasn't 100% Dillon's fault, but still, it was just a very unlucky and unfortunate circumstance for Kyle Busch. He went for a spin and slaughtered that inside barrier, just pounded that thing. And his car basically spent most of the race in the garage area being repaired. I mean, it was very substantial damage. It was the type of damage where most other races, I doubt that team would have really tried to get him back on the racetrack because it would have just been too much work. But given it was an elimination race as it was, they worked their butts off. And unfortunately, it just wasn't quite enough. So Kyle Busch finished way back. I think it was 40th, if I'm not mistaken. And so he, unfortunately for him, did not move on. Very sad. It's very, very sad. I understand why everyone is in tears right now listening to this. I'm so sorry that Kyle Busch did not move on to the third round. I'm so sorry. To the third round of the chase. He will be remembered as a great racer, but not a champion racer. That's all I have to say about Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch did not make it into the next round of the chase. Other guys that did not advance, like I'll just give a summation of their day. Jimmy Johnson, he went out, honestly, was the most dominant car in the race. This is the first race in months where Jimmy actually had probably the best race car, but unfortunately for him, it was a plate track where that doesn't mean very much at all. So Jimmy led the most laps, spent most of his time up there in the top 2 or 3, most of his time leading, so he was able to stay out of most of the danger. Late in the race, though, pit stop shook it up a little bit, just the crazy 3 and 4 wide on those last couple restarts screwed everything up for him, and he ended up finishing, if I'm not mistaken, in 24th. And so, yeah, definitely not good enough for him to advance. He needed to basically win the race. Who else? Dale Earnhardt Jr., another guy like Johnson, spent almost all the day up there in the top 3 or so, led a little bit, spent a lot of the day right behind Jimmy Johnson. But unfortunately for Junior, during those late restarts, he fell back a little further than Johnson did and got caught up in a wreck where he and Biffle made contact. It was kind of unclear to see who came up or came into who. It looked like Biffle might have gotten hit from behind and turned him into him. Anyway, Junior, his car was basically wrecked, and he had no chance after that, and that ended his championship hopes. So, tough break for those two drivers. The fourth guy that got eliminated was Casey Kane, and Casey, I mean, he ran top 10, top 5, most. He was one of the guys that was kind of trying to run up front, and he did for most of the race. Never really looked dominant, but never was bad. He wasn't just like riding around the back. Didn't have any major problems. He, unfortunately for him, just on the late restarts, just got in the wrong lanes, got shuffled back, got a lot of things happened to him, and he ended up finishing 12th and was not able to advance because of other people doing well. And now let's talk about some of the positive things, the positive results for certain drivers that came out of this weekend. I'm tired of talking about all these sad guys getting eliminated. Let's talk about some of the happy guys and how they were able to advance. I'm sure more than likely the happiest driver at the end of Sunday was Brad Keselowski, which is quite the polar opposite of how he was 2 weeks ago at Charlotte. Happy Brad over there. He won the race. Again, he ran up there with Johnson and Junior. The three of them were probably the class of the field for most of the day. And I know that's not saying a lot, given that it's a plate track, but still, they led a lot of laps, and they were up front for pretty much the whole thing. Keselowski had a couple good restarts, was able to get out front. He was trying to block 2 or 3 lanes there, was swerving up into Newman, coming back down in front of Kenseth. They had guys going everywhere. He did a good job holding on to it and really protecting. He knew he had to win this race. He was driving some very aggressive. I couldn't believe that he didn't get turned at any point. I was sitting there like just holding my breath, like waiting for it. But kudos to Keselowski. Had a really good final couple of restarts. Drove as hard as he could, honestly, and he got the win. And with that win, he advances because wins automatically advance you into the next round, given this new format. Other happy drivers, let's see. Matt Kenseth, who actually finished second in the race. He came into this thing 1 point behind 8th place. He was in 9th. He was outside on the outside looking in coming into the race on Sunday, and he was one of the guys, like I said, kind of hung out in the back, despite, he wasn't protecting his points position more or less. He was just kind of really protecting his car so he could at least have something to race with at the end there. He came into the day basically saying, we got to get a top 5, top 10, and without a doubt, we got to beat Casey Kane, because Casey Kane had that 8th spot coming into the weekend. And they did just that late in the race. They hung out in the back for most of it. Late in the race, they had their big charge forward, had a good pit stop at the very end, had a good couple restarts, and ended up pushing, ironically, Brad Keselowski to his win, and Kenseth obviously came right in behind him in second. So big run for Matt Kenseth at the end there, helped him seal a playoff spot in the chase. It was funny, Brad Keselowski's comments after the race, he found it somewhat humorous that, of course, it was Matt Kenseth that ended up kind of helping him get that win. But it was one of the situations Matt Kenseth had no choice. Kenseth could have tried something risky, but I'm guessing Kenseth knew that where he was in the points, and that just protect your line, man. Just hanging in there a second, come to the checkered, and let's go win at Martinsville. That's probably what Matt Kenseth was thinking. So those two drivers, very happy. Two guys that were on the outside coming in that ended up making it to the next round. And you know what? Kenseth doesn't have any wins yet. Neither does Ryan Newman, who also advanced with a top 5. But both those guys seem to have been some of the more consistent drivers, at least in the recent weeks. Would not be surprised if either of them advanced to the Final Four at Homestead. Other drivers that advanced, obviously Harvick and Logano had moved on just from all the other things. Jeff Gordon, Carl Edwards, Denny Hamlin, none of them had remarkable days at all. Most of them rode around the back and kind of finished mid-pack for the most part. But they had a big points cushion, so they were good. They made it, and so that sets up our field now for this final stretch of 3 races before we get to the championship race at Homestead. And I think it sets up very interesting playoff scenario. We got guys that, honestly, I didn't really expect would make it in here, and I don't know if very many others. I didn't really think Ryan Newman was going to advance. I'm surprised he did. They've run, well, when you look at his results the last 3 weeks, he's gotten a 6th, a 7th, and a 5th. I mean, obviously, you'd move on with those types of results, but I'm just surprised that team has been very consistent all year, and it's, interesting. I'm still surprised to see them move on, but, I mean, they've run well. They've deserved it. They earned it. Other guys that advanced that maybe were a little non-expected, I'd say. Carl Edwards, maybe. I don't know. The Roush cars haven't been great. Obviously, Greg Biffle and Ricky Stenhouse have been junked just about every week. Edwards, though, at least these last couple, he didn't look too great early in the chase either. But these last 2 or 3, this whole round, they look pretty good for the most part. Carl Edwards, another guy. I mean, I expected him to move on, but I didn't expect him to run as well as he had been or has been. So, Carl Edwards definitely a surprise, and he could. I'd say with Phoenix coming up, he's good there. He's good at Texas. I'd say Carl Edwards has a really good shot at moving on to this Final Four, and I think nobody would really expect that. I think most people would expect Harvick, Logano, Keselowski, and maybe Jeff Gordon to be the guys that move on at this point. But these next 3 races, I think everyone likes these next 3 tracks for the most part. So when everyone likes the tracks and everyone feels good about their chances, there's going to be those that are disappointed, and then there's going to be those that are, happy. I guess the only other thing I want to talk about in this race, or this episode, is it kind of now that I'm going to go back to the negative stuff. Now that Jimmy Johnson, Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr. and even Kyle Busch and Casey Kane are out of the chase at this point. I was looking on one of NASCAR's, I think it was on the NASCAR YouTube channel actually. One of their videos that basically was like a recap of the race or something like that. It was something that had to do with the race yesterday. And I was looking at how many angry commenters there were that are raging about how Jimmy Johnson and Dale Jr. didn't advance, whereas guys like Keselowski and Newman and Kenseth did. And I was like reading these things, and they're acting like, oh, Newman hasn't won crap all year. Why is he in? Why isn't Johnson and Jr. in? They had 3 wins. Why'd Keselowski make it in after he wrecked everyone last week and was basically a jackwagon the whole time? I was sitting there, I was like, what on earth is wrong with these people? I mean, obviously, you guys are probably looking at me right now, or not looking, but hearing me right now, and you're thinking, oh, that's just Junior Nation, Junior Nation, they're a bunch of weirdos. They're just like, Junior, go win Junior. And yeah, you may be right. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Dale Earnhardt Jr. fans, but I know that they're a rowdy bunch sometimes. Speaking of rowdy, Kyle Busch didn't advance either, and I didn't see anyone get mad about Kyle Busch not advancing. All the comments I saw were like, why isn't 6-time going for 7? This is ridiculous. But Kyle Busch, let me start right here. Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr. have been very average for the last 3 months. I mean, Dale Jr., the only tracks that he's run well at have been the plate tracks and Pocono. Everywhere else, he's just been good, you know? And he hasn't really had winning cars. He hasn't had even really top 5 cars very often. I mean, he's good, but he's not. I didn't think he deserved to be in the top 8 with the way he's been running. Yeah, I know he's gotten caught up in wrecks the last couple weeks, and so that's, I feel like that's unfair to like judge a guy just because he keeps getting wrecked. But at the same time, he hasn't run very well the last couple weeks. I mean, where was it? Kansas is the only place he's run remotely well, and it's just, I don't understand why people were so worked up about Junior not making it, or even Jimmy Johnson, because like I said, Jimmy Johnson won 3 races in the spring, and he hasn't done crap since then. He's been so average. Like I said, Sunday at Talladega was the first race that he's actually had one of the best cars, I swear. And I don't understand why people are looking at it like, oh, Jimmy Johnson and Dale Jr., they deserve to be in because they've won races. Yeah, like 3-4 months ago. Look at the guys that have been doing well since then. Ryan Newman, like I said, 6th place, 7th place, and 5th place in the last 3 races. That deserves to move on. It doesn't matter how many wins you necessarily have. And even Brad Keselowski, because let's look at this. Brad Keselowski had a good car at Charlotte. Yeah, he had his problems, Kansas, he had a good car. He blew a tire. I have to say, I wasn't happy that Keselowski won the race at Talladega, but I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, he didn't deserve to win. Because let's look at it. Brad Keselowski has been the best, most consistently the best car all season long. He hasn't really had just a dry spell, if you look at it. Like, Johnson's had a few weeks where he just didn't do anything. Junior had a few weeks where he just didn't do anything. Keselowski has not had that. He has not really had consistently bad weeks in a row. He's been very consistent. He's got 5, or what was it yesterday? Was that his 6th win? I think that was his 6th win. Keselowski has been easily the most consistently good driver in the series this whole season. So despite having his 2 setbacks these last 2 weeks, the way he drove at the end of the Talladega race backed up the fact that he has had a really good season, better than either of Johnson or Junior's seasons. He has had a really good season, and him winning that race at Talladega just was his way of saying, yes, we do deserve to be in this chase, and we do deserve to be champions, even though we had those 2 minor hiccups the last 2 weeks. And so, while I don't like Brad Keselowski and I wish he hadn't won the race, I have to say to all those people that say he didn't earn it, I think he did. The last thing I wanted to talk about was Kyle Busch. Like I mentioned, he's out of the chase. And this is where you got to look at this new playoff format and wonder, did it work? Because Kyle Busch, yeah, he was very average during the whole regular season, but once this chase started, that team turned it up, and they've been very consistent. They've been very good. These last 2 weeks coming into Talladega, they were very good, and they positioned themselves to where they had a 26-point cushion, which in my opinion, I mean, that's great. They were like they had the second highest amount of points. They were like, they're the best. They've been better than anybody, really. And they come into Talladega like this, a race where anything can happen, and everyone knows that anything can happen here. And they get caught up in a wreck that was not their fault. That was really just a freak scenario, and that wreck knocks them out of the point standings. I would understand if Kyle Busch was really, really frustrated with the point system right now, because he earned it. He deserved to be in the chase, and a freak incident here at Talladega eliminated all his previous accomplishments from the last couple weeks. And in my opinion, I feel like that's the negative of this chase system. It's got its positives, but the negatives is that sometimes the most deserving drivers do not move on. I felt after the first round when we had like Almirola, Allmendinger, Biffle, and Busch all got eliminated in that first round, I felt like it was okay because I thought those guys were the ones that deserved to be eliminated. Honestly, I felt like they were the consistently worst drivers out of everyone, so I didn't have a problem with them getting eliminated. But when you're seeing Kyle Busch, who's been so consistently and has been very good this chase, getting eliminated like that after just a freak accident that wasn't his fault, I mean, it's disappointing to see, really. I mean, in my opinion, I think he should have been able to advance. But, what are you going to do? It's the way the chase works, and fans, you can either hate it or like it. Leave a comment down below, and actually, that'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to hear if you guys like or dislike the current chase format system. If you don't like it, what would you like them to change it to, or change it back to, or whatever? If you do like it, cool. I personally, at this point, still like it, but not a lot. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm in favor of it for the most part, but there's definitely parts of it that I'm saying like no. Like I'm 60% in favor, 40% against. So, you know, I'd say it's pretty good. So that's my show, guys. This is a slightly longer show than some of my other ones. I'm right there around 20 minutes. I'm trying to keep it a little under 20, but I don't know, 20 minutes is okay. I guess thanks for listening, guys. I'm going to be doing another episode on Thursday where I'll be answering some more questions like I always do because I love Thursdays. I get to answer your questions. Usually they're very entertaining sometimes. I love the ones that have bad grammar. I'm sorry if I'm calling you out, but trying to read those. I actually those types of questions, I copy them down onto a Word document and I read them off there with, you know, proper spelling. But I guess that's the end of this show. I'll be back on Thursday and I'll talk about next week's race, which is Martinsville, the beginning race of the Eliminator round. So I think it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to this round, and I'm relieved to see Talladega be in the rear view. I'm sure a lot of other drivers are as well. So that's the end of this episode. I'll see you guys later.